The room smelled like cinnamon and pine, the way it always did in December, the way it had every Christmas for as long as she could remember. The candles were lit, the good china was out, the kind of evening that looked, from the outside, like a photograph of a perfect family. But photographs don't show you what's really happening underneath the surface. They don't capture the way a smile can be a weapon. They don't show you the eyes that watch and wait and calculate. And they certainly don't warn you about what's coming before the dessert is even served. She had driven 4 hours to be there, 4 hours through sleet and gray highway silence, talking herself into believing that this year would be different, that maybe the holidays had softened something in him, that maybe time had done what all the quiet prayers and swallowed tears had failed to do. She wanted to believe that because the alternative, accepting that her own brother was someone who genuinely enjoyed watching her suffer, was too heavy a truth to carry into Christmas dinner. She was wrong. This year was not different. If anything, it was worse. It started before she even took her coat off. He was already at the table, already on his second glass of wine, already wearing that smile she had learned to fear before. She even knew the word for what it was. He looked at her the way a cat looks at something smaller than itself, not with hatred exactly, with amusement, with the particular cruelty of someone who has never once had to question their own place in a room. "You look tired," he said. Not as a question, as a verdict. She told herself to let it go. She hung up her coat, kissed her mother on the cheek, helped carry the bread basket to the table, and she let it go, because that's what she had always done. That was the unspoken agreement she had made with the version of herself that just wanted one peaceful holiday. Stay small, stay quiet, don't give him anything to work with. But he didn't need anything to work with. He had been doing this her entire life with nothing but air. By the time the soup was served, he had already mentioned twice that her apartment was in a rough part of town, which everyone at the table understood was code for something she had worked herself to the bone to afford. He had asked, loudly, if she was still doing that little project, the business she had spent 3 years building from nothing, the one she had sacrificed sleep and relationships and entire versions of herself to create. He said the word little like it was a scientific fact, like he had measured it and found it wanting. And the table, her mother, her aunt, her uncle, his wife, all of them just kept passing the bread and looking at their plates because that was also part of the agreement. Everyone's silence was its own kind of betrayal. She kept eating. She kept her voice even. She answered his questions with the minimum number of words required. She was performing composure, so hard that her hands ached from gripping her fork. Then came the main course, and with it, the moment she would replay in her mind for months afterward, not with shame, but with something that would eventually curdle into something far more powerful. He started talking about money, his promotion, his new car, the vacation he and his wife were taking in February, somewhere warm, somewhere expensive, somewhere she would never be invited to because the invitation was never the point. The point was the telling. The point was watching her sit across from him and absorb it. He had this way of performing his own success like it was a commentary on her failure, like his accomplishments only meant something in contrast to what she lacked. And then he said it. He said it the way you drop something fragile, quickly, casually, so you can later claim you didn't mean for it to shatter. "You know," he said, leaning back in his chair, swirling his wine like a man completely at peace with himself. "Some people just aren't built for the business world. And that's okay. Not everyone can be. There's no shame in knowing your limits." He wasn't looking at anyone else when he said it. He was looking directly at her. The table went quiet, in that specific way it does when something that should have stayed internal has been said out loud. Her mother made a small sound, half protest, half surrender. Her aunt suddenly became very interested in the centerpiece. His wife smiled at nothing in particular, which was what his wife always did when he spoke. And she sat there and felt the full weight of it land on her chest. 27 years of it. Every holiday, every phone call that somehow ended with her feeling less than she had at the start. Every joke that was really just the truth wearing a costume. Every moment she had swallowed, the response rising in her throat, because she didn't want to be the one who ruined Christmas. She thought about every application she had, stayed up until 2 in the morning, filling out Every client she had cold emailed with shaking hands. Every rejection she had processed alone in her apartment. No one watching, no applause, no one to tell her she was doing the right thing by getting back up. She thought about the winter too. Years ago when she had less than $40 in her account and didn't tell a single person in that room because she already knew what he would say. She thought about all the ways she had quietly, stubbornly, painfully refused to stop. And she smiled. Not because she was fine, because she had made a decision, somewhere between the soup and the silence, that she was done performing smallness for his comfort. She opened her mouth to respond, and that was the exact moment her phone rang. She almost ignored it. She would have if she hadn't seen the name on the screen. It was a number she had been waiting on for 6 weeks, a call she had applied for, interviewed for, prepared for with the kind of focus that doesn't leave room for anything else, the kind of opportunity that doesn't come twice and doesn't wait for a convenient moment. She excused herself from the table. She didn't rush. She picked up her phone and walked calmly to the hallway, past the coats and the Christmas cards lining the wall, and she answered. The conversation lasted 4 minutes. She remembers almost every word of it. She remembers the voice on the other end being professional and warm and using her name like it meant something. She remembers her own voice, staying steady even as something enormous was shifting inside her chest. She remembers saying yes, and thank you, and I look forward to it, and then standing in the hallway for a moment, afterward with her phone still in her hand and the sound of her own heartbeat very loud in her ears. The call was from the firm she had submitted her business proposal to in October. The one that represented a level of opportunity she had barely let herself fully imagine because she knew how much it would hurt if the answer was no. They weren't saying no. They were saying yes. They were saying they'd reviewed her work and found it exceptional. They were saying they wanted to move forward. They were saying a number, a partnership figure. That made her close her eyes and press her back against the wall because her legs needed a moment to remember what they were for. She stood in that hallway while her brother was 20 feet away at a table, explaining to their family why people like her don't make it. She stood there and let the full, almost unbearable irony of the moment wash over her. Then she walked back into the dining room. She sat down. She picked up her fork. She looked at her brother, who was mid-sentence about something else entirely now, who had already moved on because what he had said to her was so routine to him that it didn't even require follow-through. She looked at him and felt, for the first time in as long as she could remember, completely and utterly free of him. She didn't tell them that night. That was the part people always found surprising when she eventually shared the story. She said nothing. She ate her dinner. She helped clear the table. She kissed her mother goodbye and drove 4 hours home through the same gray sleet. Except that now the silence felt different. It felt like the quiet before something begins rather than the quiet of something defeated. She told them 3 weeks later when the contract was signed, when the paperwork was real and the money was in writing and there was nothing left to argue with. She told them in a group message because she didn't want to perform it. She didn't want a scene. She just wanted it to be known. A single paragraph with the name of the firm and the nature of the partnership and what it meant for the business she had built with nothing but stubbornness and sleepless years and a refusal to let someone else's opinion of her become her own. Her mother called crying, proud in the way only a mother can be when she realizes she almost missed something. Her aunt sent 3 exclamation points. His wife liked the message and said nothing else. Her brother texted 4 hours later. It was a single sentence. It said, "Congrats, didn't know you had it in you." She read it once. She put her phone face down on the desk, and she went back to work, because that's the thing about people who survive being underestimated for their entire lives. The validation, when it finally comes, is almost beside the point. The work was never about proving him wrong. It was about proving herself right, about honoring the part of herself that kept going even when every voice at the table was either mocking her or silently watching someone else do it. The victory wasn't the phone call or the contract or even the look she imagined on his face when he read that message. The victory was every single day she had shown up before any of that existed. Every draft she had written and rewritten. Every pitch she had rehearsed in a bathroom mirror with no audience. Every morning she had chosen this life knowing full well that no one in that dining room believed in it the way she did. The most dangerous person in the room is never the loudest one. It's the one who has been quietly building something in the dark, while everyone else was busy being certain about what she was capable of. She is still building. The table is bigger now. The chair at the head of it is hers. And every December, when she drives to that house and smells the cinnamon and the pine, she sits down to dinner as a completely different version of herself. Not because she changed, but because she finally stopped pretending to be smaller than she was. If this story moved something in you, if you've ever sat at a table where someone used their words like a slow and practiced knife, if you've ever had to hold your victory quietly to your chest in a hallway while someone in the next room explained why you'd never have one, then you already know what she knows. You don't need their belief. You never did. You just need to keep answering the phone. Subscribe if you're building something in silence. Drop a comment and tell me about the moment someone underestimated you and lived to regret it. Watch the next video because the story I'm about to tell you is even darker, even more satisfying, and it starts with a betrayal you will never see coming.